in Minneapolis for quite some time, and I've always felt safe, and I've been aware of the carjackings and everything that's happened. I just didn't think it would ever happen to me.
Wow. Now listen to that. This wokester, wokety woke wokester. She was aware of it for quite some time. And what she won't tell you, or maybe they wouldn't add this into the piece. Well, of course they didn't ask her that. She was for defunding and dismantling at one point. At one point, you couldn't poke your head out of a hole in Minneapolis unless you were for dismantling and abolishing the police department. Okay? I would say somewhere between May 26th to 2020 and May 26th of this year. And what a funny thing happened. When they defunded the police, took millions of dollars from the police department funding, which directly affects the amount of patrol officers on the streets, and different units like the gang unit, the gun unit that we never see. We see beat cops. You know why we never see the gang unit or the gun unit? Because we're not thugs and gangsters. Okay? Same reason you never see a SWAT team. The only times I've ever seen well, for me, it wasn't a SWAT team. It was the Major Narcotics Division. The only one time I've ever seen them. 2 times, actually. Let me change that. One time I did see a SWAT team. My house was raided. They thought that somebody who frequented my house, maybe came over there 3 or 4 times, was there. And when they searched it, they didn't find him. They left. Another time, the Major Narcotics Division. Other than that, I've never seen those units because I'm not at the place where they're raiding, looking for drugs or looking for perps. Same thing with the gang unit and the gun unit. Had one experience with the gun unit. Went down the wrong street. They stopped us. Look, guys, we don't care if you got any weed, drinks, or anything in the car. And we were drinking. We had all of us were drinking Heinekens at the time. But they said, we don't care about none of that. We're looking for guns. They searched the car for guns, let us go. So we were in a very sketchy area. And that's what they were doing that night. They had the gun unit, what do you call it, roadblock. They were searching cars for guns. Other than that, I never seen their gun unit. So these people like this woke woman right here, and many of you out there in the comment section, and many of you out there in the world, when you say defund the police and you take away all these different units that they're just getting rid of the gun unit, they're just getting rid of the plainclothes officers, they're just getting rid of the gang task force. Dude, that's the reason you can walk the streets. Because the gang task force is chasing these. Now, these guys are still committing crime and they're still heavily, shootouts. But it's at a level that's acceptable. Okay? It's at a level that's acceptable for people to walk the streets and people to go to the grocery store. When you remove one of those units or multiple of those units in your city, then those guys that, had to, plan or had to wait till nighttime or had to, work in the recesses and the shadows of society, they can come out now.
I've lived, in Minneapolis for quite some time, and I've always felt safe, and I've been aware of the carjackings and everything that's happened. I just didn't think it would ever happen to me.
A Minneapolis woman shaken, the latest victim of a crime that's skyrocketing in the city this year, carjacking. Thank you for joining us. More than 500 carjackings already reported in 2021.
Now, this one happened right in the front of a woman's home. Tonight, she's sharing her story and some advice for others to always be aware of your surroundings. Paul Bloom is live in the newsroom for us tonight. Paul, these attacks, they happen very quickly, and they're very scary for folks.
Randy, the attack's terrifying. Now, you know,
Who's doing them? If there's 500 carjackings, and let's just say all the arrests you've made for them, say you've made 150 or 200 arrests in those cases, is there a certain demographic that is overwhelmingly represented in the suspects? Or is it like 25% gliders, 25% crouching tigers, 25% ombritos, and 25% sunmen? Like, is this a certain type of individual we should look out for? Is there a certain community that needs to be, asked to, try to do something about this from within? Just asking for a friend.
These attacks, they happen very quickly, and they're very scary for folks.
Randy, the attack's terrifying. Now, you know, we've spoken to several of these carjacking victims over the last year with assailants brandishing weapons, using threats of force and intimidation to, of course, steal cars, wallets, and phones. Well, tonight you heard from her, one brave, strong woman speaking out in an effort to warn others.
Then probably about 30 seconds later, someone came, put a gun to my head, a woman to my head in my seat.
This carjacking victim tells me it all happened so fast. She was in a car with a friend Sunday night right outside her home in northeast Minneapolis. That's when an armed woman grabbed her on the passenger side. Two men with guns went for the driver. She recalls at least one other assailant in a getaway vehicle. The crew took their keys and car, and they were gone.
So she got carjacked by a woman. A woman put a gun to her head. A woman. Now, it's funny how they can conveniently leave out all identifying markers, all descriptions. Now, but if a cop had showed up and somebody got shot or punched, all trying to commit a crime, we would know the race of the cop and we would know the race of the victim.
And it was very, very traumatizing. I can't even explain it, to be honest. And it's still hard for me to process even what happened. Even though it happened a couple of nights ago, I'm still just kind of in shock of the whole thing and that something bad can happen so quickly.
The woman explained that she was well aware carjackings like this one, captured on a home surveillance system months ago, have plagued the city, but never figured she would be the target herself. So far, MPD has 524 reports of carjackings already this year, meaning officers are typically responding to more than one a day, sometimes several in quick succession. On Tuesday, a Minneapolis Regulatory Services employee had his wallet and city car stolen. The carjackers subsequently crashed the vehicle as law enforcement tracked them via GPS. 2 suspects arrested, 2 others detained. The recent victim tells me it feels like no one is safe.
It just makes me even pay more attention to, who I'm with or who's around me, what I'm doing.
And that woman went on to tell me she believes the female assailant who had that gun to her head appeared to be in her 20s, maybe 30ish she even, making this crew somewhat different in that these carjacking suspects, authorities have told us, tend to skew younger in their teen years. She also recalls there was no nervousness or panic on the part of the suspects, meaning they knew what they were doing. We're live in the newsroom tonight. Paul Bloom, Fox 9.
At 5, a mother terrified after a driver pointed a gun at her and her 2 kids on a busy Charlotte road.
And the mom says the road rage incident started when the driver almost hit her car in a turning lane. Fox 40.
How many times have I told you this? The roads are dangerous. They're simply dangerous now. The entitlement. Everyone's talking about Kyle. Kyle, 17-year-old. Listen, it's all a deflection, man. Now, when you think of gun violence in America, you think of a 17-year-old glider. That's what that's about. Listen, man, when you're on the roads, if a son man does something like cut you off, don't even squinch up your face. Don't even frown. Just smile and look ahead. Because if he senses that you got an attitude about what he just did, he might chase you down and fire some shots into your car. Oh, but wait. Imagine if you are the one who switches lanes. He's in your blind spot. You don't see him. And you go to switch lanes and he honks his horn and you get back in your lane. The chances of him firing a shot into your car then have exponentially increased. And this happens all the time. I just did a video last week on Chandrika. If you saw that video on Chandrika, there were like 20 videos that I had to put in that. I could only put 3. I could only put 3 videos in there. There were so many videos of that same incident happening all across the country that in that few days that just the ones that I caught, that you guys sent me or that I found myself. I had to cut it down to 3 incidents. This video, I'm only able to put a certain amount of the incidents that I have in because I'm only one guy. That's why I tell you guys, go subscribe to Reclaim Your Throne channel. Go subscribe to this channel. And any other brothers that's doing content like this. I don't have enough time. I think it's Black Gen Z or something. Go subscribe to his channel. I don't have enough time to get all this stuff. The roads are dangerous. And you know, everyone knows who's doing it. You guys do know who's doing it. Everyone knows who's doing it.
At 5, a mother terrified after a driver pointed a gun at her and her 2 kids on a busy Charlotte road.
And the mom says the road rage incident started when the driver almost hit her car in a turning lane. Fox 46's Maureen Ward spoke exclusively to a woman. Maureen, this all happened while they were on their way to school.
Yeah, Alicia, it was 7:15 in the morning on the way to school here when one mother says another driver just lost it and waved a pink gun at her, all while her kids were inside the car with her at the time. It was only about 2 minutes long, but Erica says what happened at the intersection of East Mallard Creek Church Road and North Tryon Street will stick with her and her 2 sons, which is why she didn't want to show their faces.
I was terrified. My son in the back seat, my youngest was actually screaming, really petrified, literally petrified. Never seen him act like that.
Now, if this was a sister, this is a sister, right? So think about it. If this was a glider that did this to this sister, we would have already known. It would have been the first thing they told us. Sharpton might be down there, or Crump, talking about, we need a national conversation on race and vigilantes being emboldened by the Rittenhouse verdict. This is the new America. They might even drag Trump into it. But if this sister, this person who waved his gun at this sister and her kids over a minor traffic offense, and it's funny, they can claim the police are pulling over son men for minor traffic offenses just because of the color of their skin. But you do a minor traffic offense to a son man. I mean, a minor one. They'll kill you for it. But the whole country's complaining that they get a $50 ticket for a minor traffic offense.
I was terrified. My son in the back seat, my youngest was actually screaming, really petrified, literally petrified. Never seen him act like that.
It was my first time in that situation, but I'm 16. He's like 12, and I hope he's okay.
She says she was driving to school on the morning of the 17th when another woman driving this car almost hit them. So she honked at her. That's when the driver started yelling and pulled out a pink gun.
I got panicked for about a good 20 seconds, not knowing what to do. But then I dialed 911.
But her phone call to police didn't help. She says they told her, even with the photo, they couldn't do anything about the driver because they can't prove it was her driving the car.
That's when I finally started crying out of anger. I was just like, what do you mean you can't do anything? Like, I have her license plate.
Yeah, but sister, by that logic, I could just take anybody, picture of somebody I didn't like, license plate, and go down to the police station and be like, yeah, this person pointed a gun at me, go lock them up. And the police would go lock them. Our knowledge of the criminal justice system, which goes on display every time there's a big case, is absolutely astounding considering the amount of interactions we have. Like, it's kind of like how I always talk about first aid and life-saving measures, CPR, tourniquets, things like that. The group that knows those things the least, of course, by far, country mile, are Sun people. Yet, they live in the most dangerous areas. And they make up the most gunshot victims, by far. Same with this. We don't know anything about the legal system as a group, as a collective. The thugs do, but y'all want to listen to them. Because if you listen to a thug, you be like, dang, this system ain't racist. You listen to a thug talk about his career in the criminal justice system, you gonna have trouble sleeping at night knowing that, wow, what it takes to finally get them behind bars for a long time. So you don't want to hear it from them. But the average Sun person, they know nothing. Their ignorance on the legal system, the criminal justice system, everything. It's like we don't know anything about anything.
A good 20 seconds not knowing what to do, but then I dialed 911.
But her phone call to police didn't help. She says they told her, even with the photo, they couldn't do anything about the driver because they can't prove it was her driving the car.
That's when I finally started crying out of anger. I was just like, what do you mean you can't do anything? Like, I have her license plate.
She says she's had to talk to her two sons to make sure they're okay. And her oldest son is worried about the impact it'll have on his little brother.
It's not just about you. There was other people in the car. My little brother was in the car, and that could have been a traumatic experience for him.
Now, police just got back to me a little while ago and said, yeah, they were here, they talked to Erica, and even though the whole situation was, quote, concerning, it's not a crime. Live off of North Tryon, Maureen Works, Fox 46.